All right, you're good to go.
We would like to welcome TM Weissenberger, who will be presenting today on digital accessibility essentials. TM, him is the campus coordinator for accessible digital in information technologies at the University of Iowa. In this role, he provides day-to-day strategic and tactical leadership on digital accessibility policy, practice, and assessment. He also offers accessibility training and consultation to individuals and groups across campus. For the past 3 years, TM has co-chaired the Big Ten Academic Alliance Chief Information Officers IT Accessibility Group. He is also a former co-lead of the Unison Consortium's IT Accessibility Group and the University of Iowa's Council on Disability Awareness. Prior to returning to his alma mater in 2011, TM spent 6 years as the Unit IT Support Manager for the University of New Mexico's Center for Development and Disability. TM believed that virtually every life activity has a link to technology, and that accessible technology can advance equity and opportunity for people who with disabilities in higher education and beyond. Also joining us a little later today to talk about the inclusive events and programming guide are Abby Beadle, who her currently works in College of Nursing as an academic support specialist. She has worked in student disability services in university housing and dining. And Bailey Anderson, them, currently works at the Student Disability Services as an access consultant and previously researched disability identity and access as a dance professor at Davidson College, Ursinus College, and the University of North Carolina. So I'll turn it over to TM.
Well, thanks, Brad. And thanks everybody for showing up today. This is really incredible. I'm very excited to be here. I was just tickled pink when Brad and Maddie, Sarah and Rita asked if I could do this session. So I'm a big fan of the libraries as an undergrad here at Iowa, actually. I was an English major, so I spent a lot of time wandering back and forth between EPB and the library. I spent lots of time in the library, and I was even checking out books back when people would walk in and present their Hawk ID or their Iowa ID card to check out books at the library. As a work study student way back in the day. So libraries, go libraries. Love libraries and librarians, and H and Maggie. I also love your pets. So that's great. So I'm glad everybody's here today, and I'd like to start by sharing. I'm just going to share my screen, and we can kind of just sort of go forward. I've got an outline. I've got a spiel and a presentation today, but I don't want that to limit our conversation. If there are specific questions or issues or if something pops into your head, please feel free to throw it into the chat, and Maddie'll convey it our way, and we'll we can make this a dialogue as much as anything else. I do have quite a few demos in place, so I'm going to go all out and share my whole screen today, so I can move rapidly between there we are. Rapidly between applications. So does everybody see a title slide here labeled Digital Accessibility Essentials? Okay, that's sort of the overarching title of of my little series of trainings. This one was made sort of especially for y'all, so I hope it works out. Some of our objectives today, we're going to talk about some of the basic concepts of digital accessibility. Really, what is it? I'm not going to belabor that point, but I think it is important to have some sort of a base understanding of where we're coming from with that. And then we're gonna dive into a few different authoring tools. We're going to see digital accessibility as expressed in Microsoft Word, a little bit as InDesign. Spring Share, I think, is on the agenda. We might make our way into PowerPoint for all I know. There are a lot of options and a lot of directions we can go. And I'm going to trust Maddie to keep me on the straight and narrow here if I drift too far. But we'll be looking at accessibility practice in a variety of formats in any event. And then we'll take a look at some tools that you have access to if you want them. They're mostly free. I think all the ones we have are free or free to us to check our accessibility outcomes, some automated tools for that. And we'll end by taking a look at some online resources on digital accessibility. And then finally, we'll turn it over to Abby and to Bailey, and they will show us the very cool campus inclusive events and programming guide. So that's I think the direction we're headed today. There are a lot of different sort of standards that we use to define accessibility, and I'm just going to jump right into this. There is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which is an open public standard, and we'll have links to that. There is Section 508, which is a federal government standard for purchasing, actually, but a lot of groups and institutions have adapted that for their internal policy purposes. I like the simplicity of what we call the POUR principles, P-O-U-R. The POUR principles, P-O-U-R, it stands for perceivable, meaning that the information we present needs to be perceivable to the people who are consuming it. And so that sometimes means visually, but it can also mean through auditory means or through even a tactile or haptic measure. And that's something that we all can do, whether we realize it or not. We can present information that can be received auditory or can be received by touch. We'll get to that. Ability, we don't always have total control over this because we're using third-party applications in many cases, but operability means that you don't need a mouse or a specific mode of interaction. Work with a tool, but you can talk to it, you can read it. And I do have one example of an operability opportunity for all of us. It's in SpringShare. Understandable. That speaks to our strengths, I think. Managing information, making it organized and predictable, and presented in a way that it is easily received by the people who are consuming it, and robust, meaning that it's set up for use in standard ways so that it can be consumed and interpreted by any appropriate technology, and that includes assistive technologies. And a little bit later, I'll bust out the screen reader and a couple of other tools, and we'll see how those fit into this. So, but actually, before we move into this, I do want to share just one or two other items. The first one I want to share is our internal policy. And there we are. That's located, it's on the IT security website. And by the way, I didn't mention, but I'm actually housed in the IT security and policy office. So our policies are all in the ITS group, but the IT security policy does apply campus-wide, and it's a policy. It's got a lot of arcane language in it, and talks about standards and roles and responsibilities. But the thrust here is that we all have some obligation to manage the technologies that we create and disseminate in an accessible. And we have standards and supports for all of that. There are some links at the bottom of this, including the IT accessibility website, which I maintain, the IT policy of the Board of Regents at Iowa, which actually has a pretty straightforward accessibility policy component, disability protection policy from the OPS manual, and a note here from the Office of Strategic Communication on closed captioning. And then there are numerous resources beyond that. The reason I bring this up is because I just want to remind folks that in addition to, our great intentions and our well-meaning approaches and our sincere desire to create an inclusive atmosphere for all, we do have sort of policy and legal guidelines as well that help us to find ways to get into the IT accessibility conversation. So with that, we're just going to assume accessibility is good, and we're going to move forward here. I'm going to start by talking about text and structure. So if you have had some IT accessibility or digital accessibility or web accessibility exposure in the past, you might have gotten to the point where you think, well, the first thing they ever talk about is alt text, but that's really not the case. I mean, in my opinion, alt text is a very, very important, well, it's a critical aspect of accessibility, but there's so much fertile ground in the document construction area that I want to start with that first. And so here are 7 features kind of focus and weave in and out of these throughout the conversation today. The first is machine readable, visually legible tagged text. There's a saying, it'll come up here in a second, but the point is, we don't want to have scans of text. We don't want to be presenting images of text or flat files of text. We need real text that you can select, that you can copy and paste, that you can search, and that can be reformatted or repurposed into other output modalities for auditory release, for braille release, for different kinds of consumption. Along with that, though, we get to have clear typography. We like our layouts, we like our contrast, we like our formats. So if you're a document designer who loves a good visual kick, then you can do that and make sure that that's readable. Meta information plays a role. We'll see when we get to the screen reader part. I'm going to make a note so I don't forget that. When we get to the screen reader demo, that the document's title in many cases is the first thing that's announced to a user. And so the user immediately knows whether or not they're in the right place. And then all the other structural images, headings, bookmarks, tables of content, reading order. We're going to see quite a bit of those today. And then one that I'm going to include, even though it's outside of the scope of today's conversation, is captions and transcripts. I would urge you to focus on those as we proceed. So as I said, we don't want to use flat file text. Pictures, as they say, are for puppies, not for paragraphs. What we have here is a series of images depicting a number of inaccessible tools, or a number of inaccessible, I should say, document types. We've got a PDF there. We've got a flyer, probably created like in Canva or Illustrator, something like that. We have a real live page from a recent climate survey here at Iowa. We've got a photograph off a website. We've got an infographic describing 96% of disabilities being invisible. We've got a cartoon, a single panel cartoon. We have an event announcement. We have a patient safety alert. We have a lot of these different things. And all of these pieces of information are, they're not available to people for various reasons, because they are inaccessible. And I'm going to start now. I'm going to fix my share so that we can hear audio from my machine, and we're going to do a quick overview of of email as an inaccessibility problem. Okay, Maddie, will you let me know right away if we can hear this, or for that matter, see it? Okay. This is what I get for practicing. All right. I do think this is important enough to view, so I'm going to just go out and get it. You're seeing something loading there? Okay. And hearing a little noise?
Yep, thank
Yep.
you. Thank 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 you.
Accessibility to dialogue.
In 2019, an urgent email circulated through the university community. The message included content that was time-sensitive and contained information intended to help people respond to an outbreak of measles in the area. Unfortunately, the message was an inaccessible flattened file embedded as an image into the mass email. As a result, many people were inadvertently denied access to important information during a public health incident. This video includes a recording of that email as forwarded to TM by the original recipient and read using Microsoft Outlook's Read Aloud feature, one of its immersive reader tools. Identifying information has been redacted. From Redacted. Sent, Friday, April 26, 2019, 1:33 p.m. To Weissenberger, Todd M. Todd-Weissenberger at uoa.edu, Corey, Kirk-Corey at uoa.edu. Subject, forward, urgent please read, safety alert. Importance, high. TM and Kirk. This is the inaccessible document sent out Wednesday afternoon regarding measles. I forwarded it back to Redacted, asking that an accessible version be sent out. In addition, I forwarded it to Redacted, expressing my concern. She indicated yesterday that she reached out to Redacted administrator to make him aware of the concern. To date, that concern has not been acknowledged by anyone associated with composing/disseminating this email. Redacted. From Redacted. Sent, Wednesday, April 24, 2019, 3:09 p.m. Subject, urgent please read, safety alert. Importance, high. Notice, this UI healthcare email, including attachments, is covered by the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, 18 U.S.C. 2510 to 2521, and is intended only for the use of the individual or entity to which it is addressed.
I'm going to pause there. We don't need to read that entire, we don't need to read the entire privacy notice for sure. But what we do need to do is maybe just debrief on what just happened there. If you have any question about what that was, we had received an email from a campus constituent, a blind person, and that person had received this email, this object, this blurry thing that's in front of us here, and had been had attempted to read the email, and it had an experience similar to what we had here, where the email reader jumped right over the content of the email because it was a static image. So I'm going to open up that image for viewing just real quick here, and we don't need to read it again, but if I'm going to just sort of describe it to the group here. This was sent out as a patient safety alert. It's got contact information for the Iowa Department of Public Health. It's got information about signs and symptoms, what to do if you suspect you have measles, how to diagnose it, where to get help, who to call, all kinds of information that was very urgent and very timely, or it was perceived as such at the time anyway, and yet it was constructed and disseminated in such a way that many recipients were just simply unable to consume it. So in that respect, the information, which is quite, there's quite a bit of it here, was of no use to people who couldn't consume it for that reason. So this is why, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to my presentation here. This is why often say that we do not disseminate any information only in an image form. Always have a text alternative available, and that's why I start by talking about text. So, and feel free to comment on this in the chat as we go along. But so here are some best practices for your digital text. Use real text, not scans, not images. In addition, use styles and not physical formatting. So in other words, if you're highlighting a piece of text and clicking on the B for bold and switching your font to, Algerian red 40 point or whatever too often, then that's physical formatting. And we're going to take a look at the styles tools here in just a minute. Very helpful. Make sure that your reading order is both logical and accessible. That is to say that the information reads linearly from point A to point B. Even if you have a layout that is sort of multidimensional, like a magazine or a flyer, make sure you've got your alternate text in there, reading order once again, and something you can do to test the documents that you send out. Highlight the stuff. Use your mouse for this. highlight text and see if you can copy it, copy, paste, do a search. If you can't do any of those things, then you might have the wrong format for the information you want to disseminate. I'm going to move quickly past this. This is an accessible PowerPoint, and very quickly, just some background. I tried sending this to Brad earlier, and he got a blank gray single slide, and I'm not sure why that is. But some information or just some guidelines. This is just really some ballpark recommendations on creating, on using good typography for accessibility purposes. So beyond text itself, headings and document outlines and other semantic elements help you to sort of chunk up your information. That's what headings do. They create topics and subtopics and so forth. Tables of contents and bookmarks are made that way. And then they also provide support for when you send it out to PDF. So here are some do's and don'ts. The main things that we'll see here: nest your headings 1, 2, 3. Don't skip, and don't use images of text only for important information. Okay, that's where we're at with this. So I'm going to go ahead and switch views here, and I'm going to open up. I'm going to open up an MS Word document here. There we are. So, and it's actually opening up a different one. There we are. So this is an MS Word document. The text here is borrowed from a handout on somebody's library guide, getting started with EndNote. But what I wanted to share was that that document actually had some accessibility issues, and they mainly pertain to what we're talking about here. So I want to start by, if you're a Word user, you're probably familiar with the Styles toolbar. Happens up here in the home ribbon, and you may be familiar under the view menu with the navigation pane. The navigation pane reflects the outline of your document as created by headings in your Styles toolbar. So as I move through that and I'm adding headings 1, heading 2, and so forth to my document, what I'm doing is I'm creating this outline structure. And the reason that this is useful is because if I don't have that, I'm eliminating an opportunity for screen readers to browse my content by topic heading. I'm also eliminating an opportunity for PDF users, if I export this to PDF, to create bookmarks and other types of navigational structures. So there's a lot of value to be found in here, and we'll try and look for some of that in a minute. So this is the basic proposition. I'm using headings right now, and I'm going to go ahead and pull out a more fully formed one so that I'm not spending the next 15 minutes adding headings to this document. And now I'm going to segue into the concept of styles and how styles and headings go together. First of all, here's my navigation pane. It's over here on the left. It's in the navigation pane, which is under the view menu, as I said, and this contains a pretty robust three-level outline of my document. Okay. Now, next up for this is to set styles for our different heading levels or our different types. So in this case, I'm going to right click. In fact, I'm going to do something a little different here. I'm going to highlight my first level heading, and I'm going to decide that I want it to be Roboto slab black. And instead of 16 point, I want it to be 18 or 21 point. And I'm going to change the color to this delightful shade of purple, and I'm going to center the thing, right? And with that complete, I'm going to right click on my heading 1 and select the update heading 1 to match selection. Okay. Now, I don't know if everybody saw that, but now the heading 1 is visually represented in that way. And so we have, yes.
Nice.
Okay, so we have, yeah, so now we have a reusable version of that style.
You're fine.
Is that you, Maddie? All right. Now, the real fun comes when you have those multiple second and third level styles here. So I'm going to come to my heading 2 style and quickly modify that. And I have to move the zoom item out of the way. And if you're a Word user, you may have seen the modify style doodad before. And I can make choices down here. For example, I choose Roboto medium. I can make it white. I'm trying to replicate from memory the general style of what we saw in the handout. So I believe it had a purple background on a box. I'm just kind of spitballing here, adding a little bit of padding, something of this nature. And now I have the preview over here, and all of these heading 2s now, bang, they all change at once. And so the beauty of this approach is not only that it creates an accessible document outline that your user can traverse, which I'm going to demonstrate in a minute, but it can save you a lot of time if you have a sense of how, what kinds of formatting choices you want to make. Okay, and you can change it at any time too. If you don't like Roboto, swap it out for Antonio, and it all changes at once. That's accessible and a time saver for document developers. So another reason why I like to lead with that. Now, from an accessibility perspective, I'm going to open up our friend NVDA. NVDA is a screen reader tool, and it's in wide use, especially among, it's in wide use really at every level of society among blind users who are blind and have and low vision, because it's free, and you can download this at nvaccess.org. And I don't have that in my list right now, but you should be able to hear it momentarily. Ever hear the little trill?
Loading NVDA. Please wait. Okay.
All right.
Okay. 001 EndNote MS Word headings. Getting started with EndNote 20 for PC.
Okay, that's basically what it sounds like. It reads the stuff that's on your page, right? Now, if I'm an NVDA user and I'm coming here to see this EndNote 20 tool, there might be something I'm looking for, and I'm going to go ahead and search for that. But I don't necessarily know where it is. But if I have this cool outline, if I know that my designer has made this document in a searchable way, then I can probably find it. And I'm going to start looking through my headings.
Page 1, Section 1, Installing EndNote, heading level 2.
Okay, that was my second heading there. Heading installing EndNote. No, I know how to do that.
Install journal title lists. Do this before adding references. Heading level 3.
Okay, I want to go higher. I'm going to stick with my heading levels 2.
Add references, heading level 2. Page 4, import known citations from PubMed via EndNote search, heading level 2.
There we go. So if my goal was to find out how to import a citation, then I've managed to quickly traverse this document and find that. Imagine doing this without looking. That's the point of the screen reader. And at this point now, my screen reader can read this list to me.
Heading level 2, import known citations from PubMed via EndNote search bullet. Use this option for importing known citations, not for identifying records by topic. Bullet in EndNote under
Okay, I'm not going to run this all day. It gets old really fast. But the point here is that now by creating this textured multi-layered outline, I'm good to go. Now, I don't have a demo here that omits the outline, but if I did, all you would hear that voice say is no next heading, no next heading, no next heading, and it would go on and on and on like that, and the result would be pretty much a drag. So that's headings, and I want to keep the ball rolling here because of our time constraints. That was one, and I do want to share one other one, a SpringShare library app demo with headings for this purpose. So I'm going to link over to a I'm going to link over to a library app that I'm creating right now. Pay no attention to the clean-cut gentleman in the suit coat. Okay. We're working, and I want to especially thank Rita Songson for helping me out with this, getting started on a digital accessibility library guide. This is going to be a thing, but I want to start with maybe accessibility articles and resources too. Okay, this is dummy content for the moment. You can visit it. I'm going to preview this, and I'm going to use a tool. If you see up in my toolbar, and I'm in Mozilla Firefox at the moment for some reason, but in my toolbar, there's a tool here called the Web Developer Toolbar. That's on my tools page on the IT Accessibility website. And for web use, and that includes library guides, I can use this to check out some information about my content. And in the information here, I can view a document outline. The document outline for this page, hey, look, that's pretty robust. I've got the university libraries thing that is on the top of every one. And then I've got the title of my tab. There's my tab there. And here's the title of my top box, I think. And then here's another box that's got some content in it. And this is all structured, H1, H2, H3, a tutorials box. And all of those things I want to point out are, they're just all here right in the, right in the edit tool. So you've got your headings here, your heading 1, 2, 3. It's all available. It's just regular old stuff. Right at your fingertips. And so that makes for a nice sort of accessible outline. However, if I don't have those things in here, if I've used that physical formatting, and this will be my last word on this, but if I've used that physical formatting and I go to preview that, oops, sorry. You notice I've got a lot fewer, I've got many fewer options here. I've got the headline is nowhere near as robust. The tabs automatically take the heading 2, then anything under that needs to start with heading 3. So, think about the outline you made for your term paper back in high school, and that's a pretty good way to start thinking about a basic document construct if you can get there. I'm going to pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and see if there are any questions or concerns at this time.
Hi, this is Wendy. I have a question about that SpringShare outline. There were 2 heading 1s, and University of Iowa Libraries appeared twice on it, and with no disambiguation.
Yes, I've noticed that. That's I don't know if that's part of the implementation here, which might be a question for Ken Klinkenbeard or someone, or if that's inherent in the Silvershare or the SpringShare application. Let me swing back over to that. I think I closed it already, actually, but that though, excuse me, Wendy, while that is definitely open for discussion, as long, and I think we're looking at, let me see. I think we're looking at this one here, which actually is a function of the university's branding policy. That comes from OSC. And then down here, I think the other one is in the footer, also from OSC. In my personal opinion, those are borderline cases. I shouldn't concern myself with them too much, as long as the links are accurate and they both point to the right, and they all point to the right place. And there's also some distinguishing content that surrounds this. For example, under the in the bottom area, you have the footer designation, the footer object, and that will be announced by a screen reader. So you're at the footer library as opposed to, or footer link, as opposed to the as opposed to the header link, which is in here somewhere. I think it's right there. So well, your point's well taken, and hopefully there's enough distinguishing matter surrounding those to help a user to remain oriented. Thank you. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, let's see if I can find my way back to Zoom. I'm not sure. Oh, I'm sharing. So any other questions on headings, navigation styles, or anything in the moment? When I send this out, this will also link to a YouTube video of the climate survey chart that was out of order in the 2018 report. Okay. All right. Well, then let's just keep hopping. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about images and alt text. This is what a lot of people consider to be sort of day one accessibility, first cut accessibility, and we will spend a little bit of time on this. So I'll just jump right in. First of all, here again are 8 real sort of verities about image alt text. First of all, we provide alt text for almost all images, but not necessarily all images. The next few are some pretty straightforward sort of scenarios, simple images, a little bit more complex, informative images, charts and graphs, complex images such as, like, say, an infographic or something with multiple interpretations, and decorative, which don't necessarily need to be announced at all. We'll look at all of those in just a minute. And then, of course, text images, logos, and word marks, all of which is to say that any image can have more than one interpretation. It's not uncommon. We'll take a look at an example of that. One hard and fast rule, if it is hard and fast, is don't use the file name, path, or URL as the text of your description, because it doesn't describe the image at all. So the big thing here is that the alt text should stand in for whatever the purpose of the image is. And this, I thought this was really a pretty good example of a basic image in a basic library guide. We have a picture on the left, and I'll just use the alt text to describe it. It's a sepia tone photograph, and the alt is sepia image of Mary Jane Seacole, British Jamaican woman of African descent, lived 1805 to 1881. Perfect. I don't know about perfect, but it's quite good. It adds a little bit of context. It adds a little bit of, like, the person's lifespan, which wasn't necessarily part of the image, but it's I think it works. I like the notation that it's a sepia tone image, and I just think that it describes things well. Now, there is a long and, as you can imagine, quite complex conversation going on in the digital accessibility world about when to describe people by their physical or apparent features, or by aspects of themselves that may or may not be relevant to the reason that you're talking about them. And I have to assume that in this case, the image of Mary Jane Seacole, that her ancestry probably has some relevance in this historical context. That's a bigger conversation than I want to have today. So it's just something to think about, however. A second example here, much different. It's the University of Iowa Library's InfoHawk Plus. I think it's called InfoHawk Plus. I never know whether the plus is part of it. But as far as the alt text goes, in this case, you just want to say the University of Iowa Library's InfoHawk Plus. No need to mention the dome or any of that kind of thing. No need to mention the little hawk in the O or the stylization, unless that's what you're talking about. You know, here's an example of how we stylized our logo. Then I can see that. But if you're using this as a button or as an introductory logo, then I would say probably just leave it as it is. Pretty simple. This one came to me in email not long ago from the city of Iowa City. They had a listening post on the Americans with Disabilities Act at the Iowa City Main Library. And I thought this was a great example of including the essential information of an of an event announcement. Now, we saw this earlier, and remember, I was pretty rabid about saying, do not send this kind of thing by itself. Well, the alt text takes care of that. And the alt text is kind of small, may be hard to see on the screen, but what it says is graphic with text, ADA listening post 4 to 5:30 p.m. Wednesday, April 5th, 2023 at the Iowa City Public Library, Meeting Room A, 123 South Lynn Street. Does it contain all of the text that's on this event announcement? No, it doesn't. But it contains enough of that text, I think, to make it usable as it is. And I would say that if you're going to send this in an email or send it in a some kind of social media, that you probably would want to take that information, not just embedded it in the image, but place it adjacent to the image instead. And that's an example of when you might want to make the graphic decorative and move the image adjacent to that, or indicate in the alt text of the graphic that the information is adjacent. So here's the fourth example. It's a contextual description. Any questions? Okay. And this is from the university's compulsory free speech training, which many of us may have seen. It contains the full text of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and that's accompanied by a gavel, and it's all laying over an American flag. And so there's a lot going on here. If you know this training, then you know that this is the first panel on the first page of the training. And so presumably this is important content. And so one possibility is to place the alt text as text of the First Amendment with flag, gavel, and copy of the preamble to the U.S. Constitution. I don't think that really suits the purpose here. Probably the best alt text would be some representation of the entire First Amendment, as we see here. I'm not going to read that out loud, but it's rather longish stuff. The one thing about it is it's a little, when speaking of length, it's a little long for alt text. You do want to make sure that your alt text is reasonable, so that when a screen reader user interacts with it, it doesn't take up a whole lot of their time unnecessarily. A third possibility is to place a link to the full text of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution at congress.gov. And in fact, you could probably combine the first item here with the physical or the visual description of the image, along with a functional call to action for the user, and kind of get the best of both worlds out of that. And then finally, I think this is final. We have here a page from the website at webaim.org. That's WEBAIM.org, WebAIM. The Web Accessibility and Mind Group. They're at the Utah State University, where they do excellent work in web accessibility policy practice and so forth. And this is a survey. This is a screenshot of a survey result that they had done recently, asking accessibility professionals, how did you learn how to do this? How did you learn about web accessibility? And there's a graph that describes the relative ratio of different responses. And then there's a table under the graph. And I thought this is a good example of a universal design for learning concept called multiple means of representation. And so with the graph, that's the sort of inaccessible visual component, but it's desirable. People like it for visual representation, but you can also include a table alongside it. And a table, when properly constructed, as we'll see a little bit later, is completely fine. This is a simple table like this, especially, it's going to be highly accessible and can provide not just more context to somebody with, say, a visual disability, but it can be more precise for somebody who needs that degree of precision or wants it. And it can also kind of help to overcome any maybe sort of cognitive load that might come from that might exist in a user who's trying to translate the colorful bars in the graph to some sort of numeric value. So I like this approach. So now, I can't talk all day. So this is going to be a moment of interactivity. What is this? What are we looking at here? I'm going to ask folks to go ahead and drop some alt text, drop some, put some alt text for this image into the chat, if you would, please. Yeah, just go ahead and describe this image right in the chat. Okay, for University of Iowa graduates looking up at the Capitol building. I like that. For gowned graduate students clasping hands, University of Iowa graduates celebrating. 4 people in graduation robes. Yeah, see, this is great. I love how we're identifying the key components, and feel free to keep them coming, but I love how we're identifying the key components of this image. And the reason I use this image for this purpose is because people often ask, what constitutes what constitutes a decorative image? I'm like, well, I mean, this isn't just decoration. This is placed in a document or in a presentation or probably an annual report in order to have some kind of emotional impact, some kind of to communicate something. I kind of like a lot of yours better than mine, which is simply 4 students in graduation robes and mortarboards raise clasped hands outside the old Capitol. A couple of people caught the sense of celebration, and I really appreciate that. That's something I missed. So yeah, that's our alt text. So when you get the slide deck, this do's and don'ts. If you pull anything out, there's do's and don'ts for all of these in the slide deck, and you might just want to pull those out and keep them around. Don't use file names, use descriptive alt text, provide links to long descriptions for complex images, and then use empty alt or presentation rules for that as well. I'm going to go ahead now and take a look at alt text back in SpringShare. I think, well, no, I'm in Drupal at the moment, aren't I? Yeah. Just a couple of quick things here. Here we go. One how-to. Of course, alt text is everywhere. In other words, if you can edit a document, you can find alt text. So, and there we are. I need to bring this back up a little bit. Sorry, I can't see any of you, and it's making me unnerved. So I've got this tile, this logo from the WCAG 2.1, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Of course, I inserted that by using the little mountain with the moon up against it. That's the sort of universal icon for inserting an image. But when I look at the properties, there's virtually, if not literally always, an alternative text field that you can drop your image into. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Alt text is really easy to do as long as you don't have to be the one writing it. It's easy to implement. So if you're working with somebody on developing content, one thing I would say is that the person who has the content ownership of the document really should be responsible for creating alternate text to make sure that you're getting the right deal across. So that's sort of how that works in in SpringShare. And what I'd like to do now is take a different approach, and I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to go to the recreational services webpage, and I'm going to return to our friend, the web developer toolbar. Now, earlier, you'll recall I used the web developer toolbar to view the outline of a document, and I could see that it was scheduled. It was all 1, 2, 3, and so forth. Now I'm going to go to the Images tab in the web developer toolbar, and I'm going to choose to view image information. It's the very last item on there. I love this tool. For every image in a web page, that includes your library guide, it'll bring up the image, and it will include a property listing, including the alt text. I'm not sure why that's Elena V. Somebody must have overlooked that at some point. Now, this item here does not have alt text. If you see that in your library guide, then you need to go back and find that image and fix it possibly. But as we get further down here, get out of these, and we see, intramural softball, intramural kickball Friday night series registration, promotional image. I don't even know if I would say promotional image, but I think that pretty much describes it. Maybe something about the late night program aspect. Again, it's sort of an art form, a lot of intramural stuff here. But what I wanted to bring to light, I think we can get there from here. Oh, maybe we can't. Those might not be available anymore. That might be just as well. Okay. Well, there were a couple of items on here that I had questions about, but I think that maybe some of those were taken care of. Oh, they were made into a composite here. Recreational services images. I'm not sure that that's of any use at all. Even though these are some great pictures, especially because there's some great pictures, I don't think that's of much use at all. So consider how you want to describe the graphical content that you add in your documents. And this, of course, applies not just to the web, not just to SpringShare, but also to our our handouts and so forth. Here's the original EndNote handout that I had that I modeled some of my discussion on today. And I just want to note one. This one has had the alt text removed from it, but I'm really curious. I'm going to zoom in on this. I don't know how you describe an image like this. It's a screenshot. I know how to describe it. It's a screenshot with a number of details about the surrounding guidelines and arrows pointing to the relevant content on the interface. I get how that's a great visual aid. The question for me is how to describe it. And I'm really not sure. And that's okay. I mean, it's okay that I'm not sure and that you're not sure, but it's something to think about as you're putting an image like this in. Is there a way to convey that? Is it necessary to convey it? And if so, what do you say about it?
This is Wendy. So if the text following that said something like, the left sidebar has groups that help organize the library. You can find details about selected references, and you kind of explain all of it, where they are on the page. Would you be able to essentially call this decorative, or just call it illustrating where these features are or something? As opposed to going into details.
Yeah, Wendy, I think that's the right approach here. I mean, so as you said, this is part of a how-to. So ideally, I suppose you go to the next page and you do come to, well, I don't see it in here, but you come to the next page, or you come to a page that has these items listed out somehow. And then maybe for your alt text, you add something like, preview of EndNote library interface, detailed description follows in next paragraph, or something like that. Also, I want to point out that in Acrobat, if you get to this point and you need it, you can, well, you can't do it in this one for reasons, but in a completely done Acrobat document, you can add alt text into your PDF on the fly if you have Acrobat Pro. Any questions on alt text up to this point?
So I had put a question in the chat about the collage of images from rec services and asked if it would be better to use it as decorative in that instance. And Katie did say that if the purpose is to show the options offered, you could list those. So that's helpful. And then it looks like Todd also had a question of how do you convey an interface to someone who will never use it visually?
That is a fantastic question. And honestly, I was thinking about that with respect to this image. And I think that if you were going to create a guideline or a how-to for somebody to use this tool non-visually, you'd really have to be able to describe the sequence of keystrokes and responses that they're going to get out of their screen reader. I would start by, and you'd probably want to make a little table for that or something. You want to start with your Alt Fs and your, Control Ps and those kinds of things that take away the visual interface and change it to that kind of tactile interaction. That's a great question though, and especially when we're talking about technical documentation. It comes up anytime there's technical documentation, that comes up. Thank you for that question. Right, I don't want to. We 2/3 of the way through our time now, and I want to make sure that we're continuing on the ball here. So I'm going to let you know that web developer toolbar image info item was there. Alt text for navigation, but not for navigation. We did for navigation button in Spring Chair. Oh, there is one other thing that I'd like to share, and this doubles up nicely for us, so I think it'll work. I'm going to try and remember where I am for one thing. I have too many items. Got too many files in my life. There we are. I'm just going to open up I'm going to open up a file here that's completely unrelated to anything that we've been talking about at all. And in fact, I don't even have to do that because I've got this one here. So what I wanted to share, and I think I'm going to go to that plan B. What I wanted to share was a first look at the Microsoft Office accessibility checker. So in Office, that's found under the review button, or the review ribbon, I should say, and you'll find it over here under check accessibility. There are some different tools that you can use there. I'm just going to check accessibility altogether here and let it run the whole report since we're here. And what it's telling me is that I am missing a description for some object, in this case, an image. Let's see, I need to see which one that is. And here is, oh, this is the dome. So this is what it looks like when you get the file path for alt text. That won't work for us, but you could enter new alt text in here as you create the file. And then another item, and can you believe it? It's this one right here. Oh no, it's not. It's the Finder button. So again, this would be an easy describe. It's the Finder button. Look, although again, of what would go to visual description of an interface element might be, it's hard to say. And then one thing that Word does that is vexing sometimes is that it creates automatically generated descriptions of images that you drop in there. Here's our friend, the interface that we were looking at. And I can verify the description, and it says graphical user interface text application. That is probably the most common alt text generation that we get out of Microsoft these days. Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, OneNote, all of the Excel, even all of the Office suite have this same accessibility checker, and it varies depending on the features of the tool, what it will check for. So that was a nice little sideline there, nice little segue. I do hope that AI, among other things, will make automated alt text better. We'll see. All right, I'm going to move right along here now. Color contrast and differentiation. I'm really excited about this part. This is really the last, I think, of the major issues that you can handle as an author. I mean, you can do some stuff with tables and lists, and I don't want to minimize that, but handling your color palette is a big deal. Color contrast can improve accessibility, and here's your proof. There's a pie chart here. The top 10 Portuguese cities by population, and that pie chart was created in color. But at some point, whether it was by machine or whether it was by monochromatic vision, the color was extracted from it, and now the legend, which at one time fed into the percentage values, is no longer relevant. It doesn't make sense. So you can't do this anymore. And this comes back to maybe to that WebAIM chart we looked at a little while ago, where you can maybe put a table or something in there. The point is, color contrast is a big deal so that you can tell two things apart, and you can also establish meaning between two things. We recently taught a build course, and this was, I have to give credit to my colleague, Andrea Masher, for coming up with this table. It absolutely blew my mind. All of the background colors are the same on a horizontal axis, and the foreground colors are the same on a vertical axis. So you can see, or it's evident here visually, I should say, that some color combinations, including maybe the possibly the lavender against yellow or the lavender against gold, have no business being together at all. So the bottom line here is color for contrast and perception. You want to make sure that what's on the background does not obscure what's in the foreground, and vice versa. And then, of course, I'm a loud and proud New Mexican, and these are my this is my life's blood here. The New Mexico Hatch chili pepper. We call it the Hatch chili pepper up here. We just call it chilies in New Mexico. But one thing that we know in the Nuevo Mexico is that a red chili and a green chili are not the same chili. They're different. So if I were ordering chilies off of a web page and I saw this, maybe because I have green blind deuteranopathy, or deuteranopia, I should say, I might have a hard time making that selection. Are they red? Are they green? I'm not sure. So the point here is that we don't ever want to use color as the sole identifying factor for a piece of information. We don't want to put two circles on a screen and say, select the red circle, not the green circle. We want some sort of maybe a texture, or even a texture or a textual reference to help people distinguish between the two. Okay. Color do's and don'ts. Make sure the background and foreground contrast. Don't use color as the only means of distinguishing objects. We'll take a look at another tool right now, because I sense the cold hand of time. Oh, rough. Okay. Fatal error during installation. Let's do something else then. There's always a backup. The product I had hoped to share just then was a product called the Color Contrast Analyzer. But there's an online color contrast tool. at WebAIM. And this is a good reason to go to webaim.org. This is WebAIM here. And here's their contrast checker. So you can enter any two color values, which you can pull out of your Windows color picker or your Mac color picker and just drop it in here. And I'm going to go ahead and make it tan or something like that, or some sort of weird olive. And then I'm going to place that against a white background. And I'm going to see that this doesn't work too well. And I can either adjust my contrast with a slider. Notice I get the fail. If I didn't mention it earlier, our standard is WCAG 2 AA, and that applies for print documents, publications, anything, anything digital. And this is a good example of how that works in the real world, because color contrast is bad or good in print. It's bad or good in digital form. So some things to think about there. And then there is a new standard for that includes graphical objects. So it used to be that the color contrast didn't apply to images. Now it applies to images with certain exceptions, and that does include logos and word marks and things like that. Those are accepted. So accepted. So yeah, if like me, you don't seem to have the Paciello Group's color contrast analyzer, you can always come online, go to webaim.org and use their contrast checker. These are all, by the way, on my website at itaccessibility.uiowa.edu/tools. They're not all there. Many of them are there. Okay. You can always visit that page if you like. That's sort of the story of color contrast. And with that, I just want to pick up three remaining pieces, and those are tables, lists, and links. And these are just do's and don'ts slides that we'll use to sort of finish things up here a little. Tables are for data, right? Just like pictures are for puppies, but not paragraphs. Tables are for data, not positioning. So if you're moved to use a table to position your information, like to create a narrower page or to put one thing on top of another, be aware that tables also will linearize content and will change the order in which content presents. And that could be a problem for screen readers. And they also get wonky as you change their size. There are a couple of items when you create a table. It says here use scope, but what you really need to do is distinguish or identify your data cells. And actually, just quickly, because I happen to have it available, this is an area where we can spend just a second here. So here I have a table of assistive technologies. I'm going to click in there, and I don't think this will let me do that, but I'm going to, I have to edit it. That's why. So when I'm working on a table, and this is the same for Word, it's the same for anything, you're going to see you will often encounter a table properties page like this. You've got your rows, you've got your headers. The things that can make your table more accessible quite simply: header rows, big Jeopardy, right? Top of the categories, and your caption. If you want to use a summary, you can do that. The summary is a little bit more like alt text. Not everybody will consume the summary, so it wouldn't make it critical. But those are three areas that, and then there are some mechanical issues, like try not to else and try to use separate tables for separate data sets instead of creating one big table and then like making heading rows all throughout it. Keep your tables discrete. Okay. Tables don't span cells unless absolutely necessary. Hyperlinks, do's and don'ts. I'm not going to demonstrate this today, but the big thing here is make sure that your text is good. Click here doesn't work that well. It really, in many ways, it doesn't work at all. I have here a web page, and it's my library guide, and I'm looking at some different articles through here, and all of them end with the phrase "learn more." Okay, and I can't stop. I'm going to do this really quickly. Bailey and Abby, I apologize. I'm going to get out of here as quick as I can. I'm opening up my screen reader, and oftentimes a screen reader user, not just screen reader users for that matter, will use a tool.
Loading NVDA. Please
Will
wait.
use a tool that allows them to
preview accessibility articles and resources. Digital speech
allows
mode
them
off.
to extract just the links out of a page. Why am I here? Well, I want to bounce to a page that has some information I can use. So this view here is what's called an elements list, and you can use your screen reader to, bounce to move quickly through a number of different content types, including links. But when I get down to these items, they all say the same thing: learn more, visited, learn more, visited, learn more, visited. In fact, I can do it. Come on now. All right, it's not going to, oh. I think I've irritated NVDA. So anyway, the bottom line is it's going to say learn more, learn more, learn more as I jump to all of these. And what I really want it to do is I want it to say things like I want to say things like view W3C accessibility tutorials, opens a new tab, or visit the Acrobat accessibility page, opens in new tab. The reason I say opens in new tab here is because this tool, SpringShare, doesn't give me a mechanism to plug that into my link. There are some authoring tools that will allow you to make that implicit, and we'll have a little icon for that has a background voicing behind it. Every time I say I'm not going to do something, I spend 10 more minutes doing it. So that's hyperlinks. The keys here, use consistent text for links to the same resource, like we were talking about earlier, Wendy. If you've got multiple links that go back to the same source, university libraries, in this case they were both heading ones, but then they should say about the same thing. Similarly, links to different places should say different things. Don't use empty links, and know that if you ever get one of those packages of social media links, chances are that it's inaccessible. And lists are the easiest of all. Use the little dots. Use the little dots, and don't worry about the rest of the stuff. Just use that. So with that, this is where I come to an end, a stopping point, and I want to ask what's on people's mind, keeping in mind that we still have, close to 15 minutes left, and I would like to give Abby and Bailey an opportunity to present the inclusive events guide. And Bria. Okay. I think I'll let people chew on this for a minute then. We'll let them bounce forward. Very quickly, I want to note that when I share out this deck, it does have information, sort of slides about all of the different testing tools that you can think about, and some implementations for them, including the color contrast analyzer. That's what it looks like. So with that, I'm gonna cede the floor and the screen share to Bailey and Abby and Bria.
That's wonderful. Thanks, TM, and thanks everyone for having us here today. We just wanted to just go through a couple of different things. We're excited to talk a little bit and share a little bit more about the Inclusive and Events and Programming Guide, which was a collaboration between the Division of Student Life and the Division of Diversity and Inclusion with support of multiple campus partners. You're kind of getting this, what we call an exclusive look, because we're still promoting kind of more broadly across campus. We also are finishing some final vetting with senior leadership, and so we'll be making some small updates, including updating the guide's name and deciding its primary location and things like that. So again, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Bria Marcello, use she, her pronouns. I'm in the Division of Diversity and Inclusion. As mentioned, I'm here with some of my colleagues, Abby Beadle and Bailey Anderson. We do like to acknowledge too that Dr. Erin Stresso, who recently left the University of Iowa, was also a major contributor in this project and part of the leadership team. So in the brief time we have, we're just going to really go through a quick history of the project, talk to you about the basic structure by doing a demo, and then talking a little bit about future marketing plans. And so just kind of going through that very quickly. So it's not a new concept. I'll say, I think that one thing that we've talked about is that, many offices across campus had already kind of attempted to create something like this. And so what we were trying really hard to do is figure out how to think about it centrally. And so in the summer of 21, which feels forever ago at this point in time, a group was created in order to coordinate those efforts, think about what was going on. The accessibility action team had documented event guidelines, that we had recent campus events that had some challenges. There was policies in place with some kind of question marks are being put up to say how accessible are they. We had gotten some information from the Office of the Ombuds person and the ADA coordinator and the Council on Disability Awareness and TM Shop. And so there were lots of people who were saying, how do we maybe think about this information differently? And so the group convened and began kind of some preliminary research, figuring out the scope and defining the deliverables. So we were saying, okay, which ways can we present this information that's meaningful for a large audience? And then how can we figure out really kind of connecting the various offices, what's most useful for not only as many people, but for the various types of things that could exist, right? So there are limitations in sense of saying we got all the questions around like, well, what about classroom settings, or what about meetings, or what about these things? And so we started kind of with this phase one, which was really focused on, how do we think about primarily events and programming at the moment, knowing that it's going to continue to expand over time. And so for the past year and a half, we really worked with lots of partners. We did a pilot run. There were folks even on this call who contributed to a lot of the kind of content here and helping. So, and just like I said, we're finishing some of that final vetting this spring. So with that, I'm going to turn it actually over to Bailey, who's going to do a quick demo. And I will stop my share here, and then they can start sharing their screen as well.
Thank you so much. And I think to give some kind of connect this to TMs a little bit, I think I'm screen sharing there now, just thinking about like another resource. So this guide provides another resource. TM gave you some demos, some practical how to put this into context. This guide includes a lot of what TM talked about, but maybe in a more brief skim. So can someone just confirm that you're seeing my Inclusive Events Guide and Programming Guide, the press book? We're look good. All right.
We can see it.
Thank you. So you've got a press book. I'll say that we talked a lot about different modes, different options. We talked about a website, PDF, an icon course, and we actually landed on Pressbooks partially for accessibility. We wanted a platform that allowed folks to download static content, maybe if they wanted to absorb it in a screen reader or something like that. We also wanted something that could be updated frequently, so you could go back to it to find the most recent version and then download a new copy if you wanted to. So the ability to kind of have a both and is part of why we went to Pressbooks. This is kind of the home page, lots of options to download. I'm going to drag over just a quick PDF. I'm going to scroll. So this PDF has a version that can also be navigated. And then if I scroll down, there's a table of contents. And so the benefit of having the table of contents is it's a little bit more easy to navigate, at least that's the intent. And each of these areas can expand and kind of contract so that you can kind of look at more or less. I'll say also in the development of this guide, we looked at a lot of other guides at a bunch of different universities, even some public options that we found. And we ended up deciding to go with a pretty expansive and pretty big guide. Some places have like, top 5 or top 10. And really, at least I'll speak for myself, we kind of ended up going towards a repository of a lot of different information and trying to organize it clearly so you can find what you'd like. It's not really intended to be read front to back, although you could do that. It's more intended to help you know where to go when you're thinking about in-person events. How do we use a microphone? What are some resources I have for introducing my event? What are some things I might not be thinking about when I'm planning an event? When we jump into an area, I'm actually going to go into the alt text. When we go in, on the bottom, there are places to page front and back, so I can like flip the page to go through the book. There are some questions to guide, so an ask yourself. This is partially because we also wanted to balance giving recommended practices with reflective questions. We wanted this to be both here's some ideas of things to do, but also ways to think to yourself and consider, what am I forgetting? How can I think about this concept a little bit deeper? So we wanted to balance both and in that way. So after the ask yourself, there's some recommended practices. And then towards the bottom, there are resources, as well as a place to offer some feedback in a Qualtrics form. The benefit of this being on each page is that it allows us to learn more about, oh, something's missing, there's a resource missing, or here's some evolving content. This guide has changed over time, or the best practices have changed. And so that allows us to gather that information. I think that gives us a kind of general overview of this. Bria, Abby, anything I'm missing while we're here? No? All right. I'm going to stop sharing and then send it back to Bria and Abby.
Right, so just to talk a little bit about our marketing plan, we're hoping to put some stuff out through DDEI communications, visiting with campus partners like we're doing now, and then an Iowa Now article are just some of the ideas that that we have, and our hope is that it kind of just becomes a best practice to reference the guide moving forward. So it's part of where we're at in getting the word out there. So we'd also like to keep this going, so a continued partnership between the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Student Disability Services, and campus partners. An annual review with designated task force. I can see Melissa in the comments kind of talking about what does it mean to keep documents up to date and how can we do that. So that's how we thought to make sure that we're updating this, because as Bailey mentioned when they were talking, accessibility practices change over time, and so we want to make sure that we're keeping the guide up to date, and then expansion is needed as well as accessibility continues to evolve. So hoping that that's kind of the next phase, is once we've got it out there, making sure that we're convening a group to do this review and keep it up to date. And then we've mentioned that there are a number of folks who have helped and collaborated to get the guide to where it is today. And so we wanted to list them. We had members of the leadership team, the creation team, pilot partners who worked with our first iteration when it was on Icon, our advisory team, and then other sponsors and supporters. So it's been a really cool project to be a part of, just to see all the collaboration across campus. So just wanted to extend a thank you there. Cool. I think that's anything else, Bria and Bailey, that we wanted to. Cool.
No, happy to open the floor for questions or things like that. I know there's only a few minutes left, so I don't know, Maddie, if you have other announcements or wrap up things you have to do. But
no, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording just while we get into a Q&A part of this.